Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 536 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Rachel. Rachel is a therapist. She's also the mother of a few children, one of whom has type 1 diabetes and is a twin. Please remember while you're listening that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. There's no better day than today to start with the Diabetes Pro Tip episodes. They begin at episode 210 and are also available at juiceboxpodcast.com and diabetesprotip.com. Are you newly diagnosed or don't understand some of the terms that you're hearing on the podcast? Check out the Defining Diabetes series, also available at juiceboxpodcast.com and in your podcast player. I also have episodes about algorithm-based pumping and after dark topics. Check them out. Go visit the website, juiceboxpodcast.com. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Touched by Type 1. Check them out at touchedbytype1.org. When you get there, you're going to find a wonderful organization whose mission is to elevate awareness of type 1 diabetes, raise funds to find a cure, and inspire those with diabetes to thrive. Touchedbytype1.org. The episode is also sponsored by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. You can learn more at contournext.com/juicebox. I want to tell you that this is my first time using a different computer setup, so I have a high level of concern at the moment.
Okay.
I was about to ask you if I was about to say something like, when you've done something a million times, but you're still not sure if it's going to be okay. And why would I say that to somebody who has diabetes or even understands diabetes?
No, I've never felt that way.
No, you've never felt like that at all?
Unfamiliar.
Yeah. I was like, it'd be a silly question to ask. Wouldn't it? Have you ever felt, but anyway, it seems like it's working, which is really cool. I'm going to take a split second to check your voice on the recording. So
that's fine. I also have a mic, an actual mic that I could set up. Do you want me to do that?
You sound really good.
Okay. If I sound good, then I will not mess with technology on my end either. Because
we'll just make it worse, or it'll sound better, but it'll take 20 minutes and it won't end up.
Exactly. No, I don't trust that if I hook up this mic that I won't have to download drivers and whatever. So
yeah, give me a half. I'll be here, but you sound great. This is recording. I win.
Great.
I did it. So you're the first person to benefit from this. Let me tell you about this. It's kind of interesting. So, I share about the T1D exchange on the podcast, which is an organization that I think does really cool stuff. And they have a difficult time, as everyone does, getting someone to follow through on, filling out a survey. So it's all it is a survey. So every time
I think I've done it. I'm almost positive that I have done it.
Well, thank you. Because every time someone uses my link for the survey, I make some money.
Oh,
right?
nice.
Yeah,
good.
It's lovely. It's t1dexchange.org/juicebox. I just realized I'm leaving this part in the episode. But anyway, I was able to use the money I made recently to buy a dedicated computer to record the show on. So that was really cool because I've been doing the whole thing on one computer and the hard drive fills up and then the computer slows down and it gets difficult. So this is a big deal. And I appreciate everybody who filled out the survey at the T1D Exchange. And this is what you get.
I'm so honored that I get to be the first person on this computer.
You are the first one. Exactly right. Why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll start talking.
Yeah, I'm Rachel Gibson and I'm a clinical social worker that works in private practice and a mom of a kid with T1D. And we are about a year and a half into our diabetes journey. Oh, I hate that I said journey. I really don't like that, but it came out. I also have 2 other kids. So my type 1 diabetic kid is a twin. So I've got a non-diabetic twin and then an older kid who older one is 10 and the twins are 8.
No. Wow. Very nice. Did you just not want to say journey because it sounded so kind of like...
Yeah. I don't like when therapists say journey. It's like when we call messed up situations opportunities. These are just things that I try to avoid as a therapist.
So yes, a car fell on your house, then your house fell on you, but this is just an opportunity for you to dig deep. Like, shut up.
What an amazing growth opportunity you've just been presented with on your journey.
You think people say that because what else are you going to say other than, wow, totally bad luck that your car and your house fell on you? That really sucks.
That's what I say as a therapist. I'm like, that sucks.
Yeah.
I have no upside.
There's a number of times while recording the show that I just say that because it seems like the most honest response.
It's the most validating too. Yeah. I mean, why would you? I am a big proponent of not trying to move too quickly to any sort of meaning or bright side or positivity. Like that will happen naturally from the person. But if it's externally applied, like if I, as an outside person, come in and say, but at least, you didn't get you didn't break any bones. You just got a life-altering brain injury. That's incredibly invalidating and frustrating. And now you're not allowed to have any negative feelings. I have to tell you that I completely agree. And if you've listened through this whole podcast, which by the way, you're probably recording what'll end up being like episode 570 or something like that. But amazing. I'm up to 500-ish now out. And I genuinely believe that you can't say to somebody, well, at least it wasn't this, because it kind of, although it's a very real response, like I've had the thought myself. It's a caring response.
Yeah. But it doesn't, but it can do under the surface what you just said, which is kind of minimize what diabetes is, right? Yes. And diabetes is hard, and everyone's experience with anything, well, this is going to sound new agey, but everyone's experience with everything is theirs. And you can't judge it or rate it or put it into a category. Like, it is what it is. If the worst thing that's ever happened to you is diabetes, well, that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
Well, yeah, and it can still suck. I mean, the thing is that there will always be people who are suffering more and suffering less, and there's no fairness. I mean, that's I think people could have an argument with me, but my feeling is, there's not fairness or justice about the individual struggles that we each have. It just happens. And when you're the one struggling, it always sucks. And I don't find it very helpful, nor do I recommend it to other people, to compare yourself to people who might be suffering more, because you can have empathy for them and recognize the depth of their suffering, but that doesn't make your suffering feel any better. At least to me, it's like, no, everyone has their own suffering. I find it more helpful to sort of join in the human experience of suffering and recognize that we're all doing the best we can. And sometimes it's helpful to just be with others who are feeling like life is hard as well.
Yeah. Do you think that it's fairly common and maybe even normal for people to do that, though, to seek out someone who's, in their eyes, not doing as well as they are, so that it makes them feel like they're succeeding?
I mean, sure. I think it's, comparing yourself to other people is very, very human. Mm-hmm. And like, it's also very human to, recognize that it feels good when you're coming out on top of that comparison.
Yeah.
And it's okay for that. I mean, my therapeutic philosophy is it's good to notice all of the thoughts and feelings that you're having, including ones that you don't necessarily like. And then, feeling open to all thoughts and feelings that come with it. So if I were in therapist mode, my next question would be, well, what is going on for you that you need to help yourself feel better? Like, why do you need that comparison for you to feel better? What is that giving you, and what are you not getting that makes you need that extra validation.
Yeah,
you know, like there's always more to it that I think it's good to be curious about.
Why aren't you enough?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Interesting. All right, Rachel, listen, I did my best digging on my end. I can't figure out why we booked you on the show. So can you just tell me?
Yeah, it was to lean into like this mental health side and a little bit of siblings experience with type 1, in that I've got this interesting situation with a twin. So we've got these like little justice, like they want everything equal. And then one gets diabetes. And that equality gets blown out of the water. So that was one of the things that we had talked about in terms of leaning into the mental health aspect of type 1 along with sibling dynamics.
Cool. All right. Well, how
does that sound? Are you happy you booked me?
Yeah. Oh no, I am. Trust me, in the moment, I was like, this is the right thing to do. I just really am by myself over here. So
I totally get it.
Yeah. It would be nice if I could send an email to someone and be like, hi, Rachel's coming on this morning. Just remind me what we're doing again. And then someone would, but I looked at my notes and I actually changed one of the intake questions so that I could see it more easily, but you signed up before that could happen. So anyway, and I'm not embarrassed. I really am not. Like if I recorded one of these a month and I couldn't remember, then I'd be like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. But you're the third one I've done this week so far. So
that's wild. And I'm more than happy to tell you why I'm here.
Thanks. So how long ago was the diagnosis?
The diagnosis was in January of 2020. So it's been about a year and a half.
Okay. All right. That's pretty soon. And you're saying that, so digging into the idea of twins, are they, I imagine this doesn't matter, but are they a fraternal or are they identical?
Boy, girl. So fraternal.
Definitely not identical then. I see what you're saying. See, if you would have said it's a boy and a girl, I could have made that decision on my own, but
but I get asked that a lot though. You would be surprised.
All right. So that I'm very proud to say I could have figured that out.
Well done.
So there's this kind of feeling like this happens with siblings to begin with. Like I have right now a 21-year-old and an almost 17-year-old, and they both, I think, always have an underlying feeling that the other one's being treated better or more fairly or differently.
Yep.
And it's impossible for them to see that they're individuals and that they all don't have the exact same situations. They don't need the same responses. They have different, ways of thinking. And so we parent them differently, accordingly. But when they're twins, does that ramp it up?
It ramps it up. So we have the twins and we have an older, so we kind of have this comparison. All kids are like the equality police. So it's a pretty universal parenting experience. But for me, and when I've talked to other multiples moms, it's more intense between them, and they really monitor the equality of each other more than they monitor it with the older kid. I think partly because they, being the same age, they should have the exact same privileges, the exact same, special time spent with parents, and they keep track of everything. Yeah.
Do you see it? I mean, this is not for you, for your kids, or you even professionally, but isn't it weird when you see it with adults when they're in their 30s and their 40s and they're like, mom likes him better. And you're like, oh my God, like, let it go.
Let it go, dude. Time to move on.
What is this about exactly? Like, why are you, like, you're raising your own children now. You're still worried that your sister gets a bigger piece of turkey on Thanksgiving. Like, calm down. Your dad.
I know. But what I'll say with empathy is, a lot of people snap back into their childhood stuff when they're with their family of origin. Like, it's pretty funny to see, like, when you're watching a family of adult children and all of a sudden you're seeing the sibling dynamics play out as if they were younger. It's pretty funny. Humans are funny.
Yeah, no kidding. Do you think it's important? All right. So here's an interesting question. If it was an absolute and you could only do one or the other, would you say that adults going back to visit with family in a big setting like that should definitely happen or never happen if you had to pick one?
Are you asking me if adults should go like spend time with their family?
Yeah, like with, how a lion just walks away from its cubs at one point. It's like, that's it.
Yeah.
See you guys.
No, I think I would definitely say let's continue the relationships and yeah.
Right. So there's nothing like harmful that comes from it. It's just really funny to watch everybody turn back into like 8, 5, and 9.
It's for a relatively healthy family. It's pretty amusing.
Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can actually still hear my wife talk about like they wouldn't watch the TV show I watched or like something, or, my parents didn't like my gymnastics, but they liked my sister's soccer.
Yeah. I'm not going to give specifics because they might listen to it, but yeah, I can see it happen with my husband's. You can never see it with your own family, because like you're in it, so you don't know what you're doing. But I see it when we go back to my husband's family and all the kids are there. It's just really funny, but you can. I'm not going to give specifics, but I understand. It's amusing.
Yeah, your husband's family's a mess. I hear what you're saying. No, so no. What I was going to say for real is that one of the kind of joys of being married, once you can get over feeling like someone's picking on your family, is you finally get an outside perspective from someone you trust.
It is so true.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, but in the beginning, when I was younger, I'd be like, why is she like, why does she see them like that? You know what I mean? Like I've written them all a pass in my head, I guess, for the things that.
Well, you're used to what you're used to,
Yeah. Super interesting. Okay. All right. So these kids, all right, I guess we should find out real quick. Like, how was your child diagnosed? What was it, like DKA, or you just saw?
No, it was I feel really fortunate. We never hit DKA. It was wetting the bed for like a week. We just saw weird stuff. She was wetting the bed. She was drinking like a fish, just sort of strange. And I had Googled, so I knew that this could be diabetes, but I also just assumed that I was being kind of paranoid and jumping to the worst case scenario. But that being said, after one night where she had wet the bed twice and, she hadn't been wetting the bed for years, I went to the doctor with her and I was like, you know what, I'm sure that I'm being ridiculous, but can we just check this out? And they were like, yeah, I also am sure that you're being ridiculous, but let's do this. And we got sent straight to the ER, and her blood sugars were at, I think over 800 and 900, somewhere in there.
Wow. That's pretty high.
Yeah, pretty high, but she was happy as could be. And I mean, luckily we didn't have any major medical complications. We just stayed in the hospital, getting her blood sugars down and, getting the crash course in what to do.
Wow. Hey, you want to hear something interesting that's completely off topic?
Yes.
Fish don't actually drink water down through their mouth, but obviously they need water like all living things need to live. They generally absorb it through their skin. It's called osmosis. Same way hormones and nutrients are absorbed into our blood. Sorry.
As I said that phrase, I was like, what a dumb phrase. But I decided not to interrupt myself.
Well, no. As you said it, I
had the same thought actually as it came out of my mouth. I was like, what a weird phrase. Anyway.
Because I was like, I think she made that up. I'm not certain. I have to look now.
I think it's a phrase, but I could be wrong. It could be that I like made it up or like kind of like Ricky Ricardo'd some sort of like common phrase and put it together with another one. I don't know. I'm sure your viewers can tell us.
I've heard a fish to water.
That's a different phrase.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with actually being thirsty.
Yeah, no, that's like when you just pick something up really easily.
Yeah. I know. We should go through all the sayings that have the word fish in it.
I could keep going. I've got like the feminists, like, need men like fish need a bicycle. So, I mean, we could keep going with this, but we should probably refocus.
Yeah, we should. But I don't like a fish needs a bicycle. Oh, I get that. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's probably
they don't.
Yeah, it's probably true. Look at you. Listen, you're not divorced, right?
No, I'm not.
Your poor husband. He's just, what is he? Just like ornamental vase, right?
It's just a classic feminist quote that I did have on my wall during college.
Oh, I'm sure that just drew all the boys in.
I went to a women's college. I was not about drawing in the boys.
That's great. That's wonderful. Okay. So you get the diagnosis. It's only a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Do you leave with any kind of technology?
No. And I had to just ignore everybody to get the technology because the doctors were saying, we probably wouldn't get a Dexcom until, like 6 months, and probably not a pump for a year. And I asked why, and they were like, well, insurance, they like to make sure that everything's stable first. And I just thought that was so stupid. And so I just independently got everyone's approval and then like made it happen.
Yeah.
I just ignored that. So we had a Dexcom about 2 months in, I want to say, and then a pump about like 4 or 5 months in.
I believe that all of that is bull. The times and it has to be this long.
Crazy.
You have to have this number. I think if you have insurance, you can push it through if your insurance covers it. You just have to.
That's what I did. I just said, like, I basically just called the insurance and said, hey, the doctor wants a Dexcom and a pump. How do we do it?
Exactly.
And then I called the doctor and I said, the insurance is willing to cover it. How do we do it? And I did it.
You set it up like an old timey movie. You were like, I'll just do a little misdirection over here.
I'll just say everyone approves and make them talk. And it worked. So I feel great about it.
I feel like you took a towel, held it over the phone. You're like, hello, this is Rachel's doctor for her daughter. Rachel can't come to school today. She's sick. Goodbye.
Yes, it was classic misdirection. And I recommend everybody do it because it was stupid. Like, why would we not get a Dexcom, especially? I mean, that's just, it's wonderful technology. And we should leave the hospital with it.
I once called my insurance company like 6 days in a row. And finally, on the 6th day, you could hear in the person's voice, they were like, I am going to spend all day today making sure this happens so that you do not call back tomorrow.
I mean, that's how you get it done.
Yeah. I actually used the phrase, listen, I'm a stay-at-home dad. I have very little else to do. I'm going to stay focused.
I love it. Yeah. I love the threat of just being a nuisance.
Yeah. I'm going to stay focused on this, just so you know. Great.
Perfect.
Excellent. So you don't get home with anything particular. Was it a surprise? Is there any other type 1 in the family or other autoimmune?
It was definitely a surprise. My maternal grandfather was diagnosed with type 1 very late in life. So like in his 50s or 60s, he was diagnosed. So, I'd had that exposure, but it really never, that's the only person with type 1 that we can identify. And we can't really identify much of an autoimmune. So it was definitely a surprise. That was not, of all the things that you worry about as a parent, type 1 was not really on my radar.
How about that? That's cool. Interesting to hear because everyone has, I think it's all kind of, everybody thinks there's a rule once they see something. They don't think of it as maybe just random, but obviously there's type 1 in your family if your maternal grandfather had it. That's that. But, I interviewed somebody recently who was diagnosed at like 7 and so was their father. And you could see how, when I was talking to her, I was like, tell me the truth. When your kid was like 7 years old, were you just staring thinking like, this is it? You know what I mean? It's going to happen right now. Or like when your father dies of a heart attack at an age and people have that
you keep that age in your mind.
Yeah. Like, this is what I'm going to live to. That's all sort of, meaningless, right?
Well, I think it's just, we carry it with us. But in terms of, I think the mistake that we make, that we can often make is that making it fact. Do you know what I mean? Like, because what those are feelings, those are fears, those are like milestones, but they're not, it doesn't actually make anything happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like but it can feel predictive almost.
So tell me what you do for a living.
Therapist.
And you do private practice or?
Yeah, private practice. And I I work with, my specialties are millennials and families. And then specifically I work with a lot of gender expansive kids. So kids that are exploring gender or transgender.
I have to ask, why is millennials a category?
I just love them.
Okay.
I'm an old millennial. So I was born in 82. So I'm like the oldest millennial that you can be. And millennials are so much fun in therapy because they tend to see it more as an ongoing practice, like going to the gym and getting regular checkups, which just leads to a depth and an exploration that is just sort of fun as a therapist. I just really enjoy that population.
It's not like that timeline that has like a real like leather fetish or something like that. They didn't have something specific. It was
no.
Gotcha. Just the way they see the process. I can understand that. That would be, I would think, more fulfilling for you.
Yeah, it's really just sort of like they're fun. They tend to be very like long-term committed to mental health, and it's fun to work with people who really care about self-improvement and learning about themselves as a practice of general health. Well, it's just fun.
So you're saying to other therapists, if you've got bills, you want to get those. You want to definitely.
Oh no, millennials do not make enough money to be money makers. They are not the cash cow here. No,
they're very dialed into the process, but I'm chasing them around for $5 constantly, Scott.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things they're stressed about. So yeah, no, they're definitely not the money makers, but they are very committed.
Committed and broke. Ta-da!
Yep. Millennials in a nutshell.
That's interesting. And so they came up in a time where they got overeducated and there's not work to.
Yep.
Yeah, I see.
Yep. And also kind of promised this like prosperity that isn't really available. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I can see that too, where that feeling of just go to college and things will be okay.
Yep, exactly.
Turned into a vibe when the truth is always going to be that the early bird gets the worm. Like that's you got to go out there and fight a little harder, try a little more, do extra. And if you're not willing to do that, the ascension's probably not there unless you dumb luck into something. But that doesn't make it.
But I'll also say that I would say that even with hard, like that is true. You do need those things, and you can do those things and still not get anywhere. And so that's what's tough, is that just trying to figure out. It tends to be that like older generations say, hey, hit the pavement, get out there, and that's not been the experience for a lot of millennials. Is like, no, but I did that and I'm still struggling. I'm still in like an entry level job.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's definitely a complicated like transitional generation.
Right. I wonder if the older people who say just work hard and it works out, they had such lower expectations, right? Like they just wanted a house.
Yeah.
Yeah. They weren't looking to be fulfilled. They didn't have any expectation of what, like,
I think that is definitely, there is a big aspect of that. But even like having a house. Now I'm in LA, so having a house is like, having a house here is kind of, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But like even sort of more humble dreams, like, owning a home that you can afford with a full-time job is not always in reach for some of the younger generations. I mean, things have changed a lot, and just the amount of debt that you acquire going to college is really different from previous generations.
No, it's crazy. No, it's insane. It really is. Okay. So how does your profession lend itself to parenting, or does it not help as much as you might think?
Oh, it helps far less than I wish were true.
Okay.
My husband will often, I literally teach parenting classes, and my husband will look at me sometimes and say, like, aren't you an expert in this? And I'll be like, I don't know what to do.
No, I'm just kidding.
It never translates well to your own life. But I think what it does do is I have the ability to kind of like recognize two different answers, like the answer that I'm doing that's probably good enough, but not great. And then the more ideal answer that I can strive for. And that can definitely help when I feel really stuck with parenting.
Is that then the disconnect between knowing what to do and not being so emotional that you can't get to it?
That's the disconnect for everybody, right? Like most of us know what we're supposed to do. Like, hey, stop yelling at your kids.
Right.
But it's surprisingly hard to stop yelling at your kids when they're driving you crazy.
Yeah. Why do I have to give Rachel my $40 copay when I know I shouldn't be doing this? But the answer is that you can't stop yourself for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Do most people want to be better? Or these are bad words, but I don't have a good word for it. Like, do most people want to be good people, or are there some people who you just meet that are like, or does that become a mental illness like that? socio?
I think that's a complicated question. I actually think that at least, my clients and the people in my life, I think that they are good people, and want to be better people and want to keep that in mind. So I do think that there's like an inherent goodness with certain exceptions to most people. And I think that often the work that people do on themselves, they've put off for a long time because they think it's not that important, or that it's more important to focus on others.
Yeah.
But it turns into that kind of like, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And I think that's definitely true when you get a serious diagnosis, like diabetes in your family. It's like, you do have to take care of yourself, deal with your own stuff, because you've got a marathon in front of you, and you have to be available and present in order to, run the marathon.
What about our wiring? Like, do you think about that when you're talking to people? Like, from my perspective, I've been alive a while. I pay attention to things that are going around, with myself and my family and people that I meet. And I think that when you're young, that desire to protect everybody, provide for everybody is so overwhelming. And to make babies, like, I know we think of it differently, like it's our sexuality, or I want to be like, but really, like, you are just like, I have got to eat and have sex. Like, that's kind of, you don't think it, but you know what I mean? Like, it's your drive. And for, very maternal women, it could very easily just be like, I need to have a baby. Now I have a baby. I need to take care of this baby. Like, nothing can, like, I joke about, like, my son was born and I just became my wife and my son's assistant. Like, she, she was like, oh, it's here. Go stand in the corner till we need something. Like, it wasn't like that, but it could feel like that to me. And then I'm just like, no, desire me so that we can make more babies. Like, it was a real, like, crazy. People should not have children, but yet it's fascinating to watch it happen, right? But now we're trying to, as time moves forward and people get more thoughtful and are paying more attention. And I think we get to pay more attention because life is getting, grand scheme of things, easier, right? Like, I don't have to go chip a boulder away to get to a cave anymore. I got more free time, so I can think about things. And then you're fighting against your instincts, and it's I don't know. I find the whole thing fascinating, even with like the kids. Like, look at me. Don't look at that one. That one got more than me. Don't do this. Like, that's got to be something primal. Like, look, some of us are going to die. I don't want it to be me. Pay attention to me.
No, I do think that there's a lot that's primal, and a lot of it is how we're wired. And I think I don't think it's necessarily good to work against that. I think you notice it. Sometimes you recognize the ways that it's still helping you. Like, when my daughter was diagnosed, I didn't need sleep or food. Like, I needed, enough of those things to keep going, but it's like, I don't remember having needs during that period. And that's fine. Like, that's survival. That's your instincts kick in and you're trying to protect, like, your cub. And I think there are some ways that it's really, really helpful. And then ways that the wiring goes wrong when you are, like, anxiety is sort of that wiring going wrong, because now you're worrying about things that are not life and death, but your brain is interpreting as life and death because our life is so much easier logistically now. So yeah, I think that the wiring is really, it is really fascinating, and understanding it can be really helpful so that you know when to go with it and when it's really helping you and when you might need to, introduce another storyline rather than just the hard wiring that we come with.
Yeah, I cannot have 50 kids with 14 different women. Like,
I wouldn't recommend it.
No. But there's somebody out there walking around right now who's like, yeah, I'm gonna move on, make some more babies. That kind of feeling. It's just, I don't want this to be morbid, and I certainly think we're 100 years past it, so it's not. But 100 years or so ago, my daughter isn't alive anymore.
Yeah.
Either is yours. And you would have had this short, painful experience with a bad illness, and they would just be gone. Yep. And it would have been so for many, many. My wife had a bad ear infections when she was a child. I genuinely don't think she would have lived.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
It's a different relationship with life and death.
Yeah, it's crazy. My appendix went,
Yeah.
I don't know, gosh, it's got to be like 18, 19 years ago now. I mean, prior to medical intervention, that would have got me.
Yeah,
like,
that could have been it.
Really crazy, like
it
that
is.
kind of, to really wrap your head around that sort of thing. Okay, so sorry, I found you interesting, and now we're a half an hour into this. Although, can you imagine if you weren't interesting, nobody would be along listening anymore, so it doesn't matter. It's a give and take.
They might not anyway, we'll see.
Whoa. I pride myself.
Meaning I don't know how interesting I am.
It doesn't matter if you're interesting. I can make you interesting, but you happen to be interesting, so this is easy for me. So your kid has the diabetes. The other kid right away, what are you seeing? Like with both of them, the older child and the twin, is there an immediate feeling of, oh, they're paying more attention to her than us? When you buy a new television, a new car, a sofa, a mixer, you think, I want to get the best one that I can afford. But when someone told you needed a blood glucose meter, you just took the one they gave you. It's okay. Happens to everybody. But you're in control. And you can go to contournext.com/juicebox and learn more about the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. You could take your blood glucose meter fate into your own hands and make a decision instead of just being handed whatever's around. The Contour Next One blood glucose meter is the most accurate, easiest to use, lovely to hold, brightest lightest. Actually, it has the brightest light I've ever used with a meter, and it is very light. It's okay, brightest lightest blood glucose meter that I've ever used. contournext.com/juicebox. Check it out. The meter is very affordable, with or without insurance, but it's possible that you're paying more through your insurance right now for another meter than it would cost you to buy this meter in cash even. I mean, don't get me wrong, your insurance might cover it, but I mean, it's possible right now you're paying more through your insurance for another meter that may not be as accurate than it would cost you to just buy the Contour Next One in cash. Isn't that crazy? They even have a test strip savings program, which you should look into. This website's actually got a ton of information. There's a savings program for strips, meters. Just go take a look. contournext.com/juicebox. There's links in the show notes and links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Get yourself a blood glucose meter that's easy to carry, easy to use, easy to see at night, and is incredibly accurate. Plus, bonus, second chance test strips. So you can go in, hit the blood, not get enough, go back and get more without changing the accuracy or ruining your test strip. Use my link and get the remarkable accuracy of the Contour Next test strips at an affordable price. contournext.com/juicebox. And when you're out on the internet doing your business like you do, don't forget to check out touchedbytype1.org. They're also on Facebook and Instagram. Go see what they're up to. Is there an immediate feeling of, oh, they're paying more attention to her than us?
Yes. I mean, I think that the immediate was genuine concern, or at least I'd like to think so.
Her room is bigger than mine. This is excellent. Yeah.
I think that there was, like when she got hospitalized, it was very shocking. I mean, we just literally got told to go straight to the ER. And so I think that there was initially there was concern. But once everyone was sort of like, okay, she's going to be okay. This is a big adjustment. But, then she started getting gifts in the hospital and, she stayed home from school for a week. And so then what they saw as benefits start. Oh, and eventually she got a freaking iPhone so that we could watch her numbers. Then the upsides started to show. And I know that for my older one, and I will say that according to research, this was very typical, that my older one tended to internalize and my younger one, the twin, tended to externalize, which is borne out in research. So the older one got very quiet and very good. like didn't make waves, didn't complain, didn't ruffle feathers, just sort of got quiet. But he would sometimes come in with some really heartbreaking sentences. Like there was, she was diagnosed in January, his birthday's in March. And he said it sometime in like February, do you think that, because we would keep saying, we're not, I know this is taking a lot of attention, but we're not really good at this yet. We're going to get better. And then it will not take up so much of our attention. This isn't the new normal yet. And he asked, do you think that you'll be better at this by my birthday? Because what I want for my birthday is for you to essentially pay attention to me, which was a real gut punch.
Oh my God.
It was terrible.
Kids. That broke your heart, no?
Oh, I know. No, yeah. It was like just a full gut punch. And then the younger one really just like kept tabs. He complained a lot. He monitored what presents she was getting and sort of demanded equality, which, we didn't give him. If you get diabetes, you'll get presents too.
Did your youngest son have an ERA poster he was wandering around with? He's like, listen.
It felt like it. So he really sort of externalized. He was very like verbal and, kind of like was the squeaky wheel, which, both are valid, both are fair, because it was a big change. But that's sort of how each of them responded in the immediate aftermath.
Have either asked if they're going to get diabetes?
Yes. And I think at various times have expressed more or less concern. And we're honest about, you have like more of a chance, but still not a huge chance. And the good news is we would know what to do a lot better because we've gotten the hang of it with Hannah. So, but there's definitely some anxiety there.
I have to say it's interesting because that's the right response. We would know what to do better if it happened to you. It's exactly what I would say. But if I go back a half an hour in our conversation, isn't that like saying to them, don't worry, if a house falls on you, it's not as bad?
I think it depends on how you say it. It would definitely, I'll say, I wouldn't only say that. And, we do not, in this house, we complain about diabetes. We do not bright side diabetes. So I think that within that context, I think they feel okay about talking about, that we would be able to do better, but we're not telling them to be okay with it. Like, we're not saying, just because we can handle it better doesn't mean that you have to feel good about it or like it. And what's nice is we sort of externalize diabetes in this house so that we can all be mad at diabetes. We can all dislike diabetes. And that way we're not disliking Hannah. We're not disliking the extra care or attention that she needs. That's just how our lives are. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But we can all be mad at diabetes for different reasons and at different times. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that you have to walk this kind of tightrope because she's not diabetes, right?
Yeah.
And we need to keep those things separate. And at the same time, I've spoken to a lot of adults who feel like you have to embrace it.
Yeah, it is such a balance. And I agree with the embracing. So here's so one of the main things I talk about as a therapist is acceptance, and basically just dropping the struggle against your feelings, against your circumstances, against, all of the things in your life. You don't have, that doesn't mean that you like it. And it doesn't mean that you're resigned to not changing anything. It just means that you're honest about, what's going on for you. And so I do try to layer in that, like, look, we're not going to fight diabetes. And in fact, I have a little bit of a pet peeve with the, like her fight is my fight. I agree with the sentiment. Like, certainly, diabetes is mine and hers, but I don't want to fight with diabetes because it's here. It will always be here.
Yeah.
And it is a difficult balance to like externalize it to the point that we can all be on the same team and talk about diabetes as something separate, but also accept that diabetes is part of our lives. It is not going away, and that we all have diabetes in our family.
I think that all these things lead me to be happy about the podcast, because it was always my thought that whether you think her fight is my fight is a rallying cry, or you hear it as like, oh, you shouldn't be fighting. Like that's all just the way people think about things. Like I don't,
absolutely
right. But the one thing I've always maintained was, if it was easier to take care of your blood sugar, all of this crap would be easier. And so
true.
Right. Let's get to a point where we understand how to use the insulin, so that when we have real human feelings, or we're the kinds of people who push down human feelings, or we're whatever we are, at least it's not going to be as difficult, and our health isn't one of the issues.
100%.
Yeah.
And I will say that like listening to your podcast was definitely a turning point for us. I was recommended to me about 3 months in, and I started listening to it and immediately turned it off, because I was just like, wow, that's too much. I'm not ready. And then I came back to it about 8 months in.
Cool.
And sort of went through kind of the main like recommended ones for being bold with insulin. And it really was a game changer in terms of tackling our own fear in using insulin appropriately and more assertively, I should say.
You can't.
And it was really helpful.
I'm glad. I am very glad. You can't force people into being in the place, which is why the podcast is valuable, because it's a living document kind of a feeling. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you send them to a blog post or one thought and then they hit it and like you did and go, oh, I'm not ready for this. And then you walk away from it. I don't even know. Like I think of the podcast as, sort of like a warm rolling wave that just sort of keeps moving forward through my experience with Arden and Arden's experience with diabetes.
Yeah.
And that stuff sort of just kind of, it keeps going. It's always going to keep going. I could see that 20 years from now, I could be doing an episode about Arden's having a baby or a wedding, or, and I'm giving myself a lot of credit for being able to stay alive for 20 more years. But, but that kind of, I don't see how this narrative stops. And I can see how Left Behind is a time capsule that one day it could end up being just as valuable to someone in 10 years as it is to someone today.
I can see that too. Yes. I think that's great.
So to me, this is a perfect medium for that. And I'm not all that photogenic. So it really is kind of perfect.
Even better.
It's funny. I look in the mirror and I'm like, I'm pretty handsome. And then someone takes a picture of me and I'm like, that's not the guy in the mirror. Like, what's going on? So
welcome to aging, man. That's just, I think that's just the way it is from here on out.
If I stayed far enough away from the camera to be comfortable with it, you'd be like, I think someone back there is talking about diabetes. But anyway, I just think that it's interesting to see the kids all have different experiences with it. And at the same time, I don't know that it's very much different than any other experiences they had. It's just sped up, right?
Yeah.
Like, does that make sense to you? That life's happening kind of slowly. You don't notice it. And these problems or difficulties arise and you get more time to deal with them. But this thing just comes in a wash. It's there right away.
Yeah. And you can't like slowly figure it out. You've just got to get on board.
No, you're standing there trying to figure out how to parent it. You're thinking about how to manage it, like from a technical aspect. You're thinking about the impact on 3 different children. I'm assuming at some point in a quiet moment, you're worried about your husband. You know what I mean? Like he's worried about you. You're worried about yourself. Sure. He's worried about himself. Nobody thought this was what was going to happen. Yeah. It takes away the picture you painted in your head of like, what we'll do is we'll make some babies. Rachel's a therapist. It's great. I have my job. We'll buy a house one day. It'll be good. Like, now all of a sudden everything feels like, whoa, none of that matters right now.
Yeah.
How do I stop this toast from making my kid's blood sugar 300 all day? Yeah.
Yep.
And then your other kid's like, I want to play soccer. And you're like, I'm trying not to kill your sister. Leave me alone.
It's so true.
Yeah. What the hell? I don't care if you like soccer all of a sudden. And then you feel terrible for feeling that way. And blah, 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 blah. And everyone has their own experience and their own feeling. Now, here's the question. When a child comes to you you're a trained person, right? And they ask a question. Does your brain go through like the Dewey Decimal System of proper responses and just pull out a card and start reading? Or are you not able to do that? And if you aren't able to do that, how the hell am I supposed to be able to do that?
Well, I think in my best moments, yes, my brain does that.
Mm-hmm.
And then but there's also a difference between pulling out the card and application of the skills on that card, which usually go sideways because kids are very unpredictable and they have not read the research about what's supposed to be effective.
And the way they look at you, by the way, makes you feel bad about yourself. And then you're like, oh, this kid knows I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. But the good news is that there is all the research suggests that you do not have to be perfect or even near perfect to be a great parent. So
good thing for me.
I also keep that in my mind too, is that you just really have to be good enough. It's literally a scientific phrase, good enough parenting.
Yeah.
And so when a kid comes to me, if I'm at my best, I will cycle through some of the things that might be effective and try to pick a strategy. But the more important thing is not what strategy you pick, but that you're sending the message that when they come and share something with you, you take it seriously and you refocus your attention on them as soon as you can. If it's not in that moment, you tell them when you can, and then follow through on making sure that you're connecting with them then. That's actually the more important thing than any one strategy.
How important is your intent? Like that you mean well. Even
intent is very important.
Yeah.
I think that the message is, I care. And even if you aren't quite sure how to help them with the specific feeling or situation that they're coming to you with, the more important, you can still send the message that you care and that you'll work with them to help figure it out. And that's really the most important message, because that one applies to all things.
Let me ask you a question. I feel like I notice that people give up on parenting too soon in age for their children. Is that something you notice with people? Like they're all like, they're babies and they're like, yeah, I can do this. And you're all intent. And, the kid's 6 and some kid touched them on the playground and you're at the school ready to beat up a 6-year-old. Like you've got all that like energy for children. And then suddenly they hit an age where they seem like they don't need you anymore. And they act like they don't. It's like 12, 13, 14, where they disappear to their room for a while, or they act like they don't want to be a part of the family as much. Like that, like pulling away starts. And people get their feelings hurt, I think. Or they just think that the kid's like, look how self-sufficient. And then they start like I always did want to paint. You know what I mean? Then suddenly you're not parenting as harsh. And that's, to me, the exact wrong time to stop paying attention, because now they have genitals that they're aware of. And and someone's like, have you tried vaping? And they're like, vaping? Is that like sex? Can we do them both at the same time? Like, you know what I mean? And like suddenly your brain you've just demonstrated an anxiety spiral with absolute accuracy. Thank you. I don't feel that way, by the way. Like I feel like I am going to be connected in parenting until it's appropriate not to be. And I do not allow my children to dissuade me from being a good parent. Much like when you hear me talk about when I was little, I had this, like I got sick one time and there was this giant pill. Like people are so much better at making medicine now. You don't even realize it was this big dry thing stuck in your throat. And I tried to be like, oh, I don't want to take it. And before I knew it, my dad's giant fingers were just shoving it down my throat. And I was like, okay.
Like dog.
Yeah. Like it's like 1975. And he's like, don't care what you think. Here we go. I ain't standing here in the kitchen all day staring at you crying about this pill. Like that kind of feeling. Where now I hear people say like, oh, we moisten the adhesive for 47 hours before we pull off the CGM because Billy doesn't like it if it stings. My dad would have just grabbed it with a fist and pulled it off with part of my arm. You know what I mean? And not to say he was right, but we're in a weird time right now with parenting. And you know what I mean? Just in general, can you talk more about that for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you said about parents getting their feelings hurt is, I think that's a really important note. kids pulling away about that age, or like wanting more independence, wanting more privacy, that's developmentally appropriate. And it has nothing to do with the parents, but it can feel really personal when it's your kid. And that's okay. Like, you're entitled to those feelings. It's okay to have hurt feelings, but to recognize that that doesn't mean that it's about you. It's just a feeling that you have, and it's valid and fair, but you're kind of centering yourself in a situation that developmentally they're doing what they're supposed to do. But they absolutely still need parents and parenting. And the hope is that in like the interactions that you do have with them, that you are being very clear and powerful in sending the message that you are available and interested in them whenever they feel comfortable with that, and insisting on certain times. So you are still the parent. You can still set rules where like, oh, this is family time. You can moan and groan if you want, but we're all hanging out. And, I think that it's really important to continue to parent with, focus and intentionality through the entire, adolescence it's wild. Like, so they do need parents, and they do need, parenting during that time. So I definitely agree with the assessment that that's not when we get to take up painting.
Yeah.
That might be around the corner, but it's not here yet.
Rachel, I love you. We easily could have been married and enjoying our life together as adults, not having sex. And I think we would have been very happy. And let me tell you why, because everything you just said, I completely agreed with. And I was about to say, I was like, oh, I hope she goes deeper into this. Let me have this thought in the back of my head in case she stops. But you were, oh my God, you're so good at this. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, your kids will grow up to be serial killers and monsters probably. But
you never know. And I'm going to take no responsibility for that.
Oh, hell no. Listen, life's life. I didn't have anything to do with this. But I still, like, my son's in college. He's a reasonable kid. And there are still times where I'll say to him, look, he might go, look, I'm not interested in your thoughts. And there are times where you have to evaluate and go, okay, you know what? This isn't a hill to die on for me, right? It's not that important. But there have been times, and there will be times in the future, where I'll say to him, listen to me. I have put the last 21 years of my life and existence into you. And if you think in this moment, I'm not going to say something, you're out of your mind. Like I didn't go all this way for you to drop dead now, jackass. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you going to leave me here by myself with my thoughts? Like, that's not happening. But seriously, sometimes you have to go to them and just say, look, I hear how you feel. I think that's reasonable. And here's a perspective you don't have yet because you're 30 years younger than me. Please take 5 seconds and listen to me. And sometimes you have to take the pill and stick it in their throat and be like, listen, I'm not standing here all day with you. You need to swallow this. We're doing this thing right now. It's important.
And as now a grown-up, which using the word grown up to describe myself does not make me feel like a grown up. That feels like a kid saying I'm a grown up. But I have reflected with my mom quite a bit about how all the advice that I didn't want growing up and into even young adulthood was 100% right.
Yeah.
Totally correct. And of course it was. She's older. She knows what she's doing. Right. But even when it was unwelcome, and even when I didn't take it necessarily at the time, I can remember it. So I think it's important to recognize that you are still an influence. You are still a voice, and you do have knowledge and experience that will benefit them. Even if they don't listen to it, it doesn't vanish. You're still participating and connecting. And that's so important. And maybe when they're grown up, like I am, they can come to you and say, yeah, I guess you were right that whole time.
I just don't want to get, I am trying not to get cancer so that my kids can come back to me and tell me I'm right. And then I'm going to drop dead happy. That's all I'm looking for. It really is like, I just want one little bit of validation at the end. And I don't care when it comes, as long as I can cognitively hear it enough that I can look him in the face and go, I told you. And then, but seriously, absolutely. That's impeccable advice. It really is. Life is a long game. Parenting is a long game. Diabetes is a long game. If you think you're going to win today and get to sit back on the beach, you're misunderstanding life, not just diabetes or parenting.
Yeah, life. I mean, it's all of this is unknown, unpredictable, and a long game. And it's you don't always see the fruit of the seeds that you plant. And that's a lot of how I think of parenting is, I might not ever get the, wow, I learned so much from you and you were right the whole time speech. I would be sad if I didn't. But that doesn't mean that the seeds that I'm planting now and the connections that I'm making now aren't paying dividends in the future, because we're teaching our kids how to be in the world, and they're watching us and they're learning, and that is something that they will take with them. And, hopefully we, do good enough parenting that they're taking a positive and a healthy worldview with them when they leave the nest.
So I'm going to share something with you I've never said on the podcast before. I opened up my reminders on my computer. So Apple, I need you to stay in business for a long time. I have a reminder set for Christmas Eve, 2033.
Wow.
It says, call Arden and see if she enjoys having Christmas pictures of herself. She owes me $100 if she does. This is a bet I made with her when she was 9. I've had that reminder in my computer for 8 years already.
That's amazing. But does she not want Christmas pictures taken?
I was trying to take pictures on Christmas Eve, and she's like, I don't want these. And I said, well, you will when you're older. And she said, no, I won't. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Your commitment to I told you so is amazing.
It's just that I listen, I don't begrudge a person who would rather sit on the beach their whole life, right? But I have been a person who's been built to have children since I was little. And it's, my dad leaves when I'm 13. I take care of my little brothers. I see the impact my mom gets from being divorced and being and this just becomes, I've said it before, but if I owe my dad anything, he really showed me what I don't want to be. Mm-hmm. And so it's incredibly important to me. I don't have anything more important than my health, my family's health, and my children's future. Like that's what I want to do. I think if you want to know what I think life's about, I think life is about leaving somebody else better off than you were. I really don't think there's some big payoff at the end. Yeah. And so in a slog like this, where if I'm lucky and don't get super sick, I could live 80 some years in that kind of a fight. At the very end, I just want to know that it was not even worth it, because it's worth it to me no matter what. I want to know that I had an impact on it.
Yeah.
I think. I don't want to tell her I told you so. I want her to say I have that picture and I enjoy it. Yeah. And then I can think like, oh God, I spent my time well, Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. I think of it like ripples. Like I want the ripples of my life to positively impact the people around me and to ripple out and hopefully create new ripples. And I might never see the ways that my life has impacted others, but I really hope that I am somehow positively impacting people in even very small ways. And I agree with you that like, that's how I think of life and where I think the kind of the satisfaction comes from.
Yeah. That satisfaction comes from your effort in the moment, not in seeing the fruits of your labor or et cetera.
Absolutely.
It's just not going to work. That's why for me, I don't know if you realize this, Rachel, but if I ever find a genie lamp on the beach washed up in the ocean, I already have my wishes all like set up because I don't want to mess up. Because I know in the moment I'm just going to ask for like the Heather Locklear off the poster when I was a kid and like a car. Like I know I'll get confused. Right?
Yeah.
So the first wish is no matter what happens, my next wish will definitely come true. And then your second wish is unlimited wishes. So you just go like that. And then
obviously.
Right. Yeah. And then the first thing I'd want to do is, even if I couldn't live forever, which I don't know I would want to or not, I'd want to come back like once every 100 years.
Kate, I have said this so many times.
Yeah. Just to see, like live here a year every 100 years, just to see what happens.
I just want to see what's up with people. Like, hey, what have we done? I have said this so many times that like, I don't necessarily want to like follow, like check in on my immediate family, because like they're going to be fine. Like, of course I care and I'm curious, and that would be amazing, but they're going to be great. I'm really curious about like the big picture stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing as a species? I think that's going to be really interesting.
I want an electric car for the same reason I bought a computer when I was 13 years old. Like, I just want to see what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to see how it's different from the thing I already understand. And, and for people, it might be obvious. It's funny, as I'm talking, maybe the people listening are like, yeah, well, Scott, this is what the podcast is for people with diabetes, but like, it's not as obvious to me. But I just keep thinking, like, change the way people see insulin, change the way they see success for themselves, change, so that everybody doesn't feel burdened, make people who want to be, diabetes practitioners who are going to think about it this way, like really try to impact the space in an important way. And so when you hear me say like, share the show so it grows, like that is so I can charge money for ads, but that's so that I can keep making the show.
Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong, I love money just like everybody else. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, but I want to make the podcast bigger so that it reaches more people, so that the ripples go farther, so that it can continue to work, like that kind of thing. Like that means a lot to me. Yeah. So I just want to
an amazing vision.
That's it. I just want people to live a better life. I saw somebody this morning online, and I can say this now because this won't come out for 6 months, but their child talked about using insulin inappropriately to hurt themselves 6 months after a diagnosis, because the kid doesn't want to have diabetes anymore. Mm-hmm. And, some people are going to feel that way.
Yeah.
What happens next is what's important. Like, you're not going to stop somebody who's going to feel that way from feeling that way, but the help you get them next could redirect their lives. And I want that answer to be obvious and available to people for all stuff. Yeah. I'm talking to a person now who's in their 30s. They've had diabetes forever, and I've been following them on their Dexcom for a while. And I'm just telling you, it's just years of managing type 1 in a different way, and now having different tools and not knowing how to let go of the past and bring these new ideas into their management. Like, I just want to, I keep telling the person, like, you have to pre-bolus your meals.
Right.
Well, that's hard for me. I'm like, I don't care. Like, you want all this other stuff, right? But you won't pre-bolus. The pre-bolusing is why the other stuff's not coming. Like, either do it or don't, but don't keep telling me you want it, but you're not willing to do it. And it's not her fault. This is ingrained in her.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to imagine that 30 years from now, it's ingrained in people in a different way. And the technology is that much better. And God, maybe there's, something that makes the whole thing easier or go away or whatever. But until then, I think about her. Like, I think about that woman the same way I think about your 2-year-old when somebody sends me a message and they're like, look at my kid's graph, they're 2. Like, and I'm like, oh God, like, I can't let this be like this. This is so simple to fix. Like, so let's, I don't know. I have no idea why, but I feel sometimes responsible for things I'm not responsible for. So,
well, but that passion is definitely that passion is creating the ripples that are impacting people, and people are hearing. I mean, I think it's a great example of, what we hope to do and be in the world. And the fact that you have the passion and now the expertise to do it and to impact this change, it's wonderful. And that those are the ripples that you're creating. It's great.
I appreciate that. I love doing it. And, passionate is absolutely the right word. Like, when I see somebody selling these ideas online where they're like, for 6 months you can get my package. And I'm like, please do not give that person money so they can explain to you that you need to pre-bolus and your basal has to be right. Like, please don't do that. And yet they do. And people pay them $600, $1,000 to get told something that 3 episodes of this podcast would be happy to tell you for free. And,
so true.
And so that's where I'm still I'm a very American thinker about that. I'm a capitalist. I think that I should get my money from someone else and you should get the information for free.
Which is amazing for all of us, because I definitely was benefiting from the free information.
It's a barrier. Imagine you get told to go to a podcast like you were. You already got there and you're like, wow, this is too much money or too much information. I don't need it right now. If it costs money, would you ever come back?
That's true. I don't know. I probably would have negative feelings associated with it.
And so
Yeah.
I had a person contact me recently, and they're like, your podcast is big enough. You should have a Patreon. And I was like, what? She goes, people would be happy to give you money for making the podcast. I was like, I make money for making the podcast. And she goes, well, how many listeners do you have? And I told her how many the estimate is. And she said, can you imagine if 10% of those people sent you $5 a month? And I went, ooh. And then I can't. I had never did before. And then I was like, well, that wouldn't be a bad thing, would it? And she goes, what would you do with it? I said, well, I would probably expand. And I started thinking about how I would make the podcast better and how I could help the podcast reach more people. And I thought, should I do that? Like, do you know what I mean? And I'm stuck in that feeling because she's not wrong. It would generate funds, and the funds would go a long way towards doing stuff for the show. And it's at the same time, I can't, like, I'm not of that generation. Like, it feels like I'd be making money for not doing anything, for being me. And that doesn't seem right.
Well, the therapist in me has lots of follow-ups, but I won't.
Do you have five?
I won't.
Do you have 5 minutes? Feel free to pick me apart.
Well, I am curious about what it means to you to be getting money from, like, what is the story that you're telling about getting money from people who enjoy the podcast?
Well, I mean, I'm already making a reasonable amount of money from making the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't want to take money from people so they can learn how to be healthy. I wouldn't want somebody to have put their hand out to me and it said, I can explain this to you for $5. And I realized that the podcast wouldn't be I think I'm right to say that I'm wrong about this. I think it wouldn't be a big deal if people who wanted to send a couple of dollars a month were able to do that.
Well, because you're not charging. It's not a paywall.
Right.
It's not. So I think that the hang up is not necessarily, it's not necessarily in that it like changes your sense of values or what, your vision is for the podcast, but there's something that there's a story you're telling about what it would mean that I think is the hang up.
Yeah. And it's not real.
It's not real. I mean, we all tell stories to ourselves. That's what we do. And I don't think it's useful to argue with stories either. You can see them and notice them and be curious about them, but then also make some space for other stories. Like another story in this case might be, hey, somebody might really feel compelled to want to offer money as a thank you, not because you're charging and not because you expect it, but to say, hey, this has been an invaluable resource for my family and I want to say thank you. And it's, just a way that you're making that option available. That's another story. And neither one is more true. It's just recognizing that this is more about the meaning that you're making of the situation than necessarily the facts involved with this choice.
Listen, you're right, because that already happens.
Yeah.
Like people already send me like gifts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm happy the podcast helps you. Thank you. And, and you're right. It's something about me saying it out loud that feels wrong to me. Like saying, hey, I have a thing and you could support because I know what I would do. Like, I'd be happy to like shut off the recording and tell you like some of the things that I've got going on right now that would be a lot easier with some more money. You know what I mean? So, yeah. All right.
So make some room for other stories and see how that feels.
All right, Rachel. I'll think about it. Thank you.
All right.
Hold on one second. I appreciate you doing this, by the way. Did we talk about everything you want to talk about, by the way?
Yeah. I mean, I could get real clinical and talk about some of the things that siblings might experience, but I feel like we've done more just having a casual conversation.
So do I. That's my magic, by the way. I'm only good at a few things. This is one of them. I want to thank Rachel for coming on the program and having this wonderful conversation with me. I'd also like to thank the Contour Next One blood glucose meter and remind you to go to contournext.com/juicebox. If you want to look in the show notes of your podcast player, there's a link there, or I keep the links at juiceboxpodcast.com. There's even a link to Touched by Type 1 in those exact places, where you can just type it into your browser, touchedbytype1.org. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.